So that was the recording in progress button as always. And we're back after like a brief 4-5 month hiatus that was utterly and completely my fault, for which I should be insanely ashamed at all times. For at least how long it takes us to catch up for like a podcast a month or so. So as you Americans say, let's get this show on the road and jump right into this fitness thing. How'd you like that David Drayman down with the fitness meme I sent you? Actually, like he shut down the conversation right after. I was like, okay, it's honestly understandable. It was pretty fucking.
Also, I was like actively in the gym when you sent that, trying not to hate myself. You said that right. Like I think in that conversation I was like complaining about how much I didn't want to be at the gym. and you said that, and I was like, thanks.
That makes a lot of sense. Like if I can get my editing guy to help me, maybe I'll just show that picture right here at this point in the podcast. We can edit that in. It's it's definitely something for anyone that grew up like early 2000s new metal.
Yeah.
So first thing on our agenda is fat loss. Your mindset towards fat loss. Why are you trying to lose weight? Why is fat loss even remotely on your list of interests to pursue? How can you find more positive frames for how you look at food? How do you look at your progress? Are you struggling with food? Are you struggling with motivation? So let's jump right into it. What will you maybe say made all of these things much easier for you in the recent past?
So I think that like to sound cliche, I think your mindset changes a lot of how this stuff works. And so we've talked before about coping stories and how everybody tells themselves things to cope with uncomfortable truths about who they are and what's going on. And one of the most uncomfortable truths I think that I personally face and a lot of my friends face is like, one, for women, I think eating can be a very difficult topic because at least for my entire lifetime, we've had a lot of very bad diet culture life come and go. And so now there's ideas of like what good calories are, what bad calories are, and all this other junk that just simply isn't true. But what it does is it causes a lot of guilt around food and a lot around eating.
It's a really big one.
As a lifter, you have to eat. Like to lose fat, to really lose fat, and even to lose weight, you actually have to eat quite a bit to keep up with your activity and to like nourish your body. But I think it's the same for men, but just like slightly different nuances. I think a lot of women feel really guilty when they look at what they need to eat. And for me, a lot of times it feels unachievable for me to eat as much as I need to put on the muscle that I want to put on. And so changing my mindset around good calories, bad calories, healthy food, unhealthy food. One of the biggest things that I've done in the past couple of years, because it wasn't like an overnight process, was to reframe food in my mind as kind of completely amoral. Just there's no good, there's no bad, there's just calories and the quality of calorie and what you're trying to achieve. And so sometimes, you wake up one day and you're craving just tons of chicken fingers. Like, I mean, I'm like the nugget queen. So there's days that all I want to do is eat nuggets.
It's about to say, like, if in your mind, if how you look at food and like you like start deeply personifying your food and it ends up being completely amoral, god damn, I mean, like I can see where that's gonna lead into a lot of you have like war criminals of nuggets just waging war on your metabolism. That's
yeah. But like, the thing is,
it'll lead down a whole Petersonian rabbit hole right there. It's not good.
I'm not telling myself that like chicken nuggets are an unhealthy, bad food to eat. I've removed the guilt, and I'm able now to look past it and think about why do I want 30 chicken nuggets from Chick-fil-A right now? And should I get them? And then like by thinking through it more logically like that, and thinking, getting rid of like, oh, this is good, this is bad, I can say to myself, okay, well, I want 30 chicken nuggets from Chick-fil-A right now because it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't eaten breakfast or lunch and I'm hungry. And I did this to myself. So what I need to do, rather than go get a bunch of nuggets that are like deep fried and whatever they are deep frying in anymore, I will make myself some protein with some carbs. So maybe some steak and some rice, or some steak and some vegetable, and I'll eat that. And
Yeah.
I'll see if the craving goes away and feel better. Or sometimes the answer too is, okay, I need that protein, but I only packed, this amount of food for lunch today. What is the healthiest way I can access more food without being completely miserable in my life? And so sometimes that looks like getting the grilled nuggets and adding them to your salad. And then there's no guilt there. And I'm eating the amount that I need to eat to recover from the workout and prep for the next, so that I can continue making progress at the gym, continue leaning out, and then also not hate everything that I'm doing and stay motivated.
So then what people can do, well, like what I'm taking away, what I'm hearing a little bit, what you're saying is that, say, like one positive frame to adopt to keep losing weight or to stay on track with your fat loss journey is, if you need to have a little bit of junk, straight up junk, say like chicken nuggets, maybe if you can frame your food as in food being fuel for your body, maybe having those, if you can stomach it, before or after like a very heavy training session where you really try to perform really well in the gym, where some of like high sodium foods that are considered obviously like, okay, it's probably not that healthy with tons of sodium in there, and it can still be very beneficial for performance to have something that's very high in sodium. I think people will be very curious as to like how to use common sense to factor in and structure in some quote unquote bad foods, where me personally, I really don't like that label. I stay away from that. Like I also don't moralize about any of mine or my clients' food choices. So there's no good and bad foods. It just all depends on where we are, what goal are we working towards? Are we even trying to lose weight? Maybe some people want to put on a little bit weight because they're underweight or try to build some muscle. And then what we have seen is where be people who try to gain a little bit weight, or where be people who try to lose weight long term. It's just that it was really huge trying to help people establish an awareness and the right frames to not look at food in a negative way, to detach from food being coping mechanisms for some bad emotional states, for just finding much more positive ways to look at food, not punish yourself and not feel bad about it. And then also finding, when you know you've done bad, you know you've done wrong, and you start moralizing, especially like yourself, then and your own food choices, then it's also really, really important right there to find a positive frame to not beat yourself up about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely not, because you'll be that much faster on track. And then ideally having someone to talk to who knows what he's talking about in terms of nutrition, has a little bit of an understanding of the general scientific principles of what is complete bullshit and what is not, then finding those frames will be that much easier. And having those in place will just go miles and miles, will go a long way for sure.
Yeah, because the moment you remove that emotional component, that reaction of, oh, this was a bad meal for me, I've done a bad thing, you're kind of removing the negative spiral that usually follows. Like for years, I struggled with this idea that I had to eat the tilapia and rice and asparagus diet if I wanted to lean down and be strong. And I would like get into like just massive spirals of self-loathing when I couldn't stick to the chicken and rice, tilapia and rice diet. And because I was miserable, and because like,
it's bland and
it's bland,
like
and I wasn't going out with friends. I wasn't associating anything good or productive with my meals. And then I would go out and I would like inevitably binge. at the bar on burgers and fries and whatever. And then I would go home and I'd be bloated and I feel like I just wasted all my progress. And then I keep continuing down the spiral of self-loathing. And then I would give up on the diet and go crazy binge, put on all the fat and everything that I just burned off. And so, but when you remove that, oh, this was a bad meal for me, you stop that spiral. And instead that becomes, I might have overdone it on that meal, but I'm moving past it now, and I will just make choices that align with my goals in the future a little bit better. And it kind of stops the spiral and makes it more like, oh, okay, that wasn't a bad meal. I was just enjoying time with my friends and I was balancing out the hard training I've done, or I'll just make sure that I don't skip my workouts this week or whatever the goal is.
It's like a really nice concrete example with that tilapia, broccoli, rice diet, where the way this usually works out is exactly how you describe, where say you stick to that 5 days of the week and then you have your cheat days on the weekend. It'll be exactly just how you described in that curve, where your calorie balance will go straight to like maintenance or zero, where the deficit you put yourself in by binging on the weekend, you're just going to catch up on all those calories. Whereas on the contrary, trying to find like an overall quote unquote, like what does that mean, right? A balanced approach, but like finding ways that structure those foods in you like without like a general super restrictive way that will just categorically exclude a lot of the foods you like. It's just not going to be a way that will set you up for long-term success and healthy habits.
Yeah. And then you don't like, by making that food less taboo, you take away the appeal and the guilt of eating it. Because if you tell me that I can't have burgers because they're bad for me, my nature is to crave burgers. Like who are you to tell me I can't have something? Burgers are delicious. I'm after it. But then the moment I give into it, there's that guilt spiral that kicks back in. It's like, oh, I wasn't disciplined enough to not eat that. Blah, blah, blah. I had this bad meal. I'm shitty. And just you go back to the spiral. But by saying like, yeah, you can have a burger, just like maybe don't get the biggest one. Or maybe you just don't get it every night. Maybe you limit yourself to eating every other week. No. Then it becomes like, oh, okay, like that's not a bad food for me. But instead of it being like, I have to have this food because I'm craving it and I love it and I need it and I was told that I couldn't, then the frame becomes, I'd really like a burger, but I just had one the other day. And honestly, my deadlift workout wasn't as heavy as I wanted it to be. So maybe I'll just wait till next week for it.
Yeah, that's like the meanest restriction I would impose on you people being my trainees, where it'd be like, okay, maybe we can stay away from junk or bullshit or quote unquote unhealthy foods. Like maybe you scratch that burger for like 2 or 3 weeks, because currently like you just want to make a little bit of progress for a minute, and then we'll see where we can fit that back in, where just reaching a minor fat loss goal, like a new set point, a new maintenance body weight or something, allows you again for a little bit more freedom. Of course, like things being like granted that we're not in like a dedicated super strict fat loss phase or nothing.
No, and honestly, like for me personally, I think I'm struggling because we know that, you and I know that the past like 2-3 weeks have been a nightmare of motivation for me in the gym. And so I'm also inclined to blow off steam socially. So like spend too much time at the bars and spend too much time doing stupid stuff because I'm like frustrated with my performance. But one of the things I'm struggling with is that my calorie requirements, I think, have gone up since we're trying to push my lifts a little higher. And it's actually been like difficult for me to get enough food in for a number of reasons. One,
this segues very well to like next points on our agenda, being struggling with food, but specifically struggling with motivation and then finding ways to enjoy lifting and food when you're being like a little bit too, I don't know, you're showing too much tenacity, too much grit towards your goals, and you just end up spinning your wheels a little bit, and it's just you're being a little bit overwhelmed. And then for a minute, maybe like when it's time to ease up and find ways to enjoy lifting and enjoy food again, like what you just mentioned, I feel like we'll segue really, really well into
Yeah,
that.
well, it's true that I'm very much an all or nothing person, and I tend to go a little, like, I need permission to dial back a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I definitely was very frustrated. Like, I went on vacation for 2 weeks. I came back. I was weaker than I wanted to be, and then I've got a lot going on in the future that's like stressing me out now, because I have a short amount of time to get ready for a lot of stuff. And you always remind me, but I always forget that this stuff takes a toll on your nervous system, which changes your your performance and your focus.
And also, like a much more positive frame to adopt would have been right there, that before you went on vacation, you got stronger than you were ever before.
Yeah.
So it would just take more time and more effort to build that back up again, like an immediate positive spin, which would also lead me to like the question I want to ask right there. Is just that, like, we tried to take a little bit more of a deep dive with more like sports motivation, more like mindset training related topics for like 1 or 2 coaching calls the past few weeks ago, and it seemed like you were like that actually did help you to make a change to in your training again, and then even hit like a new personal best for a minute.
Yeah, because the reality is that I'm really sometimes too hard on myself, which is great, because I'm not going to skip workouts, and I'm not going to skip, out on going up in a weight if I think I can. But the problem is that when I'm not doing what I think I should be doing, then I'm beating myself up. Even if I am like going through this stuff in my own mind, and this is, I think, the value of our team, because I didn't only talk to you about it, I talked to, some of the rest of the people that train with you about, like, man, I'm really sucking right now. And even just hearing externally from people that are watching my progress and invested in what I'm doing, having, the voice of reason say, you were just at your like peak, and then you went on vacation, and now you're back and you're still consistent, you're just dialed down a little bit, and kind of go through the same mindset stuff. It really is helpful. But then also, there's a point that you just like, because you even said this on the first time that we talked about this, there's a point that you can't think your way out of it anymore, and you just have to go and do it, and try to make it enjoyable, but you still just have to be there, and you still have to do it, which I think for me is definitely, and for other people we know, is definitely a big issue, because I like to think that I can outsmart anything. Anybody with kind of above average intelligence.
It's a very tight rope to walk, right?
Yeah.
Where just if you're not super in tune with your body, how can you know this at all times? But we do work with like more auto-regulated training, where you do have a little bit of freedom to pick intensities and volumes according a little bit to like how you feel. Whereas what this is supposed to do, of course, is not to train how you feel, but still to have like a baseline where you're still being held accountable and still have like a little bit of an athlete's mindset in the back of your head. It still enables you to like push and push when it's time to push, and keep pushing at a minimum intensity on days where you really, really do not feel like pushing.
Yeah, but sometimes I'm a little bit too self-aware, a little bit too in my head, and I'm sitting there and I'm going way harder on what I think I'm doing than I should be, or I'm sitting there trying to be too clever about how I'm getting stuff done, and trying to think my way out of things and make excuses and cope with the fact that I'm not performing the way I want to. And so it's good to have people, when the motivation is down like that, who are, one, very honest about what's going on and whether or not you're, having that too clever moment and overthinking things, and two, just there to kind of reaffirm the all the thought processes that you might already be building, or that you might have already thought like, oh, I'm going through a lot. Maybe I just need to like dial back for a couple weeks and just try to focus on consistency and enjoyment, and then the rest will come. And hearing that from something other than your own head is really good at helping kind of realign. And I think it was like two workouts later, I hit that PR. And
it can also become like a absolutely also easily become an absolute meme that, like, you know, push yourself hard. My mindset is made of steel and I've got all this shit taken care of internally. Like at the end of the day, everyone, like, and I mean absolutely everyone, is still, as a human being, a social entity that will require some external validation once in a while. It's just the nature of things. And having a team as opposed to not having a team, I've seen time and time again, and you as well, especially, of course, like much more productive.
Yeah. You can still take that mindset, that all or nothing mindset, and apply it differently. Like one of the things that we do in the Army a lot is we talk about, oh, it's a gut check. It's a suck fest. It's a gut check. Like you just have to put your head down and get through it, which is, it can be valuable if you're applying it appropriately. So for me, I applied that same mindset of like, I would get to the gym and I would not want to be there. And I would text you and be like, I am pissed off that I'm here right now. Everything sucks and I hate it. But then also in my mind, when I was thinking about skipping parts of my workout, I'd be like, you know what? This is the gut check. Do you suck it up, drop the weight, and get the actual exercise in? Or do you quit and get nothing in and just go and get a little weaker today? And
so, you against you.
Yeah, exactly. So you can use that mindset, but maybe don't try to PR on the day that you hate being in the gym the most. Or do. I don't know. I'm just here.
And like when you're stuck right there where you're struggling to find ways to enjoy lifting and enjoy your nutrition again, like what at that point in time, I think this is something we mentioned within those coaching calls as well, is that if you can just muster that little bit of fortitude again by going through your internal monologue like that, is if you can just, from say an average of 8 training sessions when you're stuck in a rut and a little bit of in a shit phase of training where you're not enjoying it too much, and say within a period of 4 weeks you did have 8 shitty, sucky, bad, fucked up training sessions, then maybe if you can turn 6 or 7 out of those 8 into mediocre training sessions, then you're already setting yourself up for like immediate success a few weeks, a few days from then, which is just obviously, of course, then also something that comes with having gone through that experience, that you will just require a lot more building phases in your training than just testing all the time, going heavy all the time, where of course that's fun, that's all good and well, you get away with it for a little bit, but obviously as you get more advanced, you get away with it less and less. I think it was also like,
you even restructured what a successful workout would look like by basically saying like, you know what, this week a successful workout is getting through all the exercises and all the reps, rather than, because I was focused on, I'm not lifting at the weight that I was lifting at before.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of redefine what a good workout was for a minute. And even though it's kind of like a Band-Aid, and I was like, okay, yeah, like you and I both know that's not, but it did actually work. And sure enough, it was like another 2 workouts or whatever. And then I hit that 175 squat. Like it was nothing.
Which for you was a 10-pound PR, like absolute weight.
Lifetime PR plus 10 pounds. And I repped it super clean.
Yeah.
Which is like, that was the tipping point of the motivation slump, where I was like, okay, time to get serious again. Like you still.
And then again, in the grand scheme of things, it was not that long since you got back from the vacation before that. And if you think about it, that's like putting you soon into like a real solid intermediate trajectory of where you probably line up with like a 1 rep max that's like 1.5 times body weight, which is really not that bad by any stretch of any imagination or standard, honestly, in my book at least.
Especially with the full range of motion too, because I've seen a lot of PRs lately that have been creative range of motion, I should say.
I mean, we'll get to this a little bit later in this podcast episode, but like, of course, in day and age of social media and Instagram, like everyone is obviously a freak and top level athlete, and
oh yeah, they never have a bad workout. They're never bloated.
Everyone else should basically abort this him or herself or themselves nowadays. Include that one in there.
Yeah.
So that goes a little bit into like how to then find some motivating frames again to enjoy lifting again, which is like what I feel is super key is this will probably also something we'll talk about in the next podcast episode, where we talk a little bit about performance versus weight loss goals, where how to consolidate when you're losing weight and you're not going to be as strong as before. Regardless, like ways to enjoy lifting, and also like we got on here ways to enjoy food as well when you're struggling with nutrition, where you mentioned like then like bulking or like keeping the calories high, which is something when I was more training myself, more powerlifting focused, would also be something to struggle with, to just eat at the exact amount of calories all the time to maintain a certain body weight to keep my performance consistent. But what I was trying to say earlier is that like finding ways to detach from this grind where you're so fucking attached to numbers. Like I have to hit those numbers. If I don't bench deadlift XYZ, I'm a failure. I'm a waste. My parents should disown me right now. No inheritance, nothing.
Coach should fire me.
Yeah, get a new coach. Disappointment across the board. Yeah, just detach from all this bullshit. Just at these moments in time, it is absolutely key. For what I've told you and other people in the same conversation. It's just that the number one key factor right there is to enjoy the gym. Like you have to enjoy your training. You absolutely have to enjoy your training, because you are not going to do this for a long time. And a long time and a long-term approach is absolutely required and an absolute non-negotiable must. Key principle for what we're trying to do here, setting up healthy habits or like lifetime things. Also, people that are like insanely strong athletes, usually the best and most surefire way for mere mortals to get there to like godly performance is just to train for a very, very, very long time and build and for a very, very long time, and in an efficient and structured approach. So if you're not going to enjoy your training in the long run, it's not going to get you anywhere. So in those phases where you're stuck in a rut, how can you enjoy lifting again? Maybe working like this is something where there's obviously no like scientific purpose to me asking you guys, okay, what type of accessories would you like to know, which would be fun to enjoy for you in your program? Like, are there any like wishes for certain accessories? Or maybe it's not necessarily like the best thing we could have you do, but if it's going to increase the fun and enjoyment you get of your training plan, why not put some of those in there as well while we're at it? If they're going to motivate you and make the process more enjoyable for you, there's like absolutely something to be said for that. 100%, no doubt.
Well, by doing that, you kind of tricked me into finishing one of my workouts the other day, because we had done that. We kind of structured, which by the way, the new structure with the longer workout on Wednesday is working. It worked really well for me. But we changed it around from like Monday used to be my long workout. And for a while that worked, because normally after Monday, all I want to do is like relax in the gym and work out, kind of take it easy. But then it was getting to be part of the motivation problem, because I'd be like, oh my God, this is the long workout. It's taking forever. But we switched it around and we changed one of the accessories to leg press, which I really enjoy. And so then I was like dragging ass on Wednesday, and I wasn't really feeling super great after the squat PR on Monday. I was kind of exhausted on Wednesday. And so I put the leg press at the end of my workout, and I was like, okay, we'll just end on that and it'll be fine. Like, we'll be fine. We'll call it a day. However, we end there. But because the leg press machines were all full, I ended up having extra time. So I completed like all the exercises that came after that. And then I did the leg press because I didn't want to leave without doing the leg press that I was looking forward to.
Yeah. And that's the one that we just added in, I think.
Yeah. And it ended up kind of tricking me into completing the whole workout, because I had to wait for the machine, but I was not leaving until I got to do the leg press because I asked for it and I wanted to do it.
That's absolutely like pleasant. It's a lot of those things, those little spins that would just come with like a little bit of experience, and long story short, all of these things, finding those different perspectives that you may not have been able to find on your own, looking at your own training all the time, stuck in a vacuum, sort of alone in the gym, is where just having a coach who knows a little bit of what they're doing, or even who may just be slightly ahead of the curve compared to yourself. Maybe he'll be able to relate much better than someone who's super advanced, right? Well, just having a coach will just be a tremendous benefit and will provide an insane amount of value in that situation.
And acknowledging that it takes time to build this stuff up, because it's been over a year now that we've been building. And I mean, we've had lots of cycles of ups and downs, but overall, like if you look at the long term, my performance continues to climb. And so then you can easily project, unlike what Instagram and Facebook and TikTok will have you believe, like you're not going to get the results you want in 6, 8, 10, 12-week programs. You're not.
Why would you? What then?
Right.
Like there and what?
If you've never ever worked out before, you're going to see results. You're going to see some changes in that amount of time. But
especially when you're going to see super rapid results and should expect to see some of those.
Yeah. But like after that, the instant gratification is gone. And you have to kind of set your mindset into, we're doing this long term and we have to do it in a sustainable way. It's not sustainable long term to work out, you know, at your max every single workout and sit there and grind through it, or do these like very popular high intensity interval training workouts that leave you wanting to vomit, because like it's not enjoyable long term. It's fun to throw that in every now and then. And for some people, maybe they want to do it a lot more, but I think the worst thing that can happen is people get into this instant gratification mindset and they're like, oh, I wanted to lose 20 pounds and I did, but now I want to lose 20 more and it's slowed down and I've only lost 2 pounds in the past 4 weeks. You know, what's going on? I want to quit, instead of thinking like, well, it took me a long time to put all this weight on. It's going to take me a long time to get it all off. Let's relax. Let's look at it in the long term and adjust some of my choices.
How can I lose that weight that when I'm there, when I actually lost enough weight that I feel sexy for a minute, that like, okay, like how can I maintain this? How can I make sure I've did it in a way that's sustainable enough that I'm not just going to gain all that weight back all of a sudden because it just crash dieted down.
But some of that's just the culture we live in right now too, where like
100%, which we're
investing
going to
in things is not what people want to do.
I think it's probably like a great opportunity to go into like the second half of our agenda for this episode. That's about the swipe culture, the absolute And at all times, every single minute, every second of the day, you're able to compare yourself to others, whether it be business, whether it be relationships, whether it be, you know, what people look like. Compare yourself to the best looking males and females on the planet at all times, as well as maybe even comparing. Everything is disposable. Everything is always comparable to the very, 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 very best cream of the crop in any area. And people think that that's just how life should be or could be, where I don't know, I would just take a leap of faith and just claim that maybe our parents' generation, not having had as much comparability at all time on in terms of swipe culture, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever, that maybe you would just much better off, much happier, just sticking to what was available to you, around you, not comparing that at all times, and then just being much more happy with what you got available to you at that point in time, and making that work, and focusing on that, and focusing on yourself without constant comparison. And also this like, it's an actual illusion that everything is replaceable at all times.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that Instagram and Facebook have removed from us is context. Because like when you exist in communities that are concrete and around you, like you're lifting with a group of people that you know, you're out there interacting with your world physically, you have context for a lot of things. So you kind of see people go through different phases of their life. But when you log on to Instagram, for example, when I was struggling with my motivation, every time I opened Instagram or got a Snapchat from one of my friends or whatever, even people that I lift with and enjoy lifting with and like working out with, and I know in person, I would see them doing something great, or I would see them, you know, looking really great. And I would be instantly in my head, I'm like, if I was a better person, if I was more disciplined, if I was, you know, if I wasn't such a shit bag, I would look like this too. But then the reality is that like that was their highlight moment. Like they were sending me a photo of their PRs while they did it. So it was the best that they did. And I'm even guilty of, I'm particularly lean one day. I snap a pic for Instagram, I post it. Everybody's like, you look amazing. I wish I looked like you. 20 minutes later, I eat my meal and I'm bloated, and gone are the abs, gone are the muscle definition.
It's something I definitely want to rant off on for just a brief second right there, where something that absolutely has been grinding my gears is and grinding them hard, like very hard, like
you're hot and bothered about
peak agitation is those fitness, like top level athlete compilations you would see on Facebook, where there's just people doing plyometrics, doing backflips, jumps, and like curtsy type lunges for whatever aesthetic purpose anyone would ever do. A curtsy lunge, which is like one of the dumbest things I've seen in my life.
Quads are just flexed when you do.
Like,
you look great.
Yeah. Your knee is twisted up, lady. What are you doing? Regardless, is that just it's so easy for people who maybe not that deep into the material, or like not that deep into their own personal fitness journey, to then just absolutely conflate and like misconstrue their point of view, where they are led to assume, and the way it's suggested is like a little bit insidious, where you think these top level athletes doing these compilations of like basically stunts, it's not even training, it's just stunts, tricks, and showing off, plyometrics, backflips, whatever the fuck kind of tricking they throw in there, is
that's their training plan, right?
Yeah, the key takeaway here is this: people should really be educated that this is not how top level athletes train. This is not how those people in the video clip build their insane athleticism. First off, they are genetically gifted individuals who are probably like somewhere within the top 5% of athletic predisposition, just genetically, which is not achievable for most people at all. And second of all, they built their base and they built their capabilities by boring, standard training that you are now being led to be, oh, it's not functional. Like, what the fuck does functional mean? Functional for what?
Wait, you mean that
For what?
mobility training isn't more important than weight training?
Like, this also like obviously an absolutely insidious term, functional, but people are being led astray to think that this is the actual training of people, and maybe even remotely like seduced to try and structure something like that as an actual workout regimen, which would of course like take the cake. But yeah, it's a little bit insidious because it's just the nature of those platforms. We all realize they capitalize on people's attention, and that's just what draws people's attention. Like, obviously even drew mine in for a minute right there.
Yeah.
But
in pure rage.
I guess the point is also like, as another positive takeaway from all these things that we're talking about, it's just that like, okay, this may be like these Facebook training compilations that I'm talking about, I'm personally 1000% convinced are making people actually more stupid by the minute. But regardless of that, in general, like, I feel that things like YouTube, things like Instagram, or maybe even some TikTok compilations from what we see, I'm not that active on there, or not even as a consumer, where the general fitness IQ of the population is obviously much higher nowadays, where like 10 years ago you would barely ever see people say like squat and deadlift in a regular gym with decent form, and where nowadays stuff like that is very common.
Yeah. I also think that people forget that they're trying to, like, everybody that's doing stuff like that for the most part is trying to sell you something. And because the fitness IQ has gone up a little bit in the general population, I find that the way that they're trying to sell you this becomes a little bit more insidious as well, to use your word, because one of the big trends that's going on right now is, instead of weightlifting, instead of powerlifting, you should work on your mobility training.
Why don't you do something functional?
Yeah, like you should work on your mobility training. You should work on what's functional for your body. Like, and to be fair, you can make some pretty solid gains just doing body weight exercises. Like, there's that guy that wrote that book where he like did all these body weight training, and he got into pretty decent shape doing like very complicated things like the human flag, etc. But they say that stuff like it's some groundbreaking thing. Oh, mobility training. But you think about it and you're like, if you weren't training mobility, doing squats to depth, like, then you wouldn't be able to do those same squats, because you need mobility. You need maximum mobility in your hips and your knees and your ankles, maximum strength in those joints, in those ligaments, in those muscles to move the weight. And it's like, strength training is mobility training. Mobility training is strength training, because even
it really shouldn't be separated at all.
Yeah, like it's what we've been going through too, where I put on a bunch of weight on my squat. Now my ankle mobility has been a little bit down. So what am I doing? I've changed my warm up to help get those ligaments a little stronger to catch them up with the rest of my body. But the two are linked, and it's
what
not
you just mentioned with body weight training. I was just going to note for a minute, like, one thing for what we ranted off on already is that functionality is always, at all times, just something is only functional when it's functional for a specific task. Right. Something that's functional for a thrower may not be functional for a boxer. Something that's functional for a power lifter or grappler may not be functional for a tennis player. And what you mentioned with the body weight program is that some of the most insanely jacked people I ever trained with for decades at a time had previously built the majority of their baseline muscle mass with nothing but body weight exercises. So those are terribly effective. I'm a huge fan. I'll always have those in my own training programs, as well as those of my clients, actually, for sure.
Yeah, well, because like your body does weigh something, and so you do have to lift it. Like, and I mean, you can practice all different ways to do it, but I think that people get so caught up in that functional fitness trend that they don't even stop to think about the fact that just having a strong and healthy body on its own is functional for everyday life. And as somebody that does jujitsu and martial arts, you wouldn't see, there's this myth even in the community that the weightlifters are not as good at the martial arts because they lose flexibility through their weight training, etc.
It's like this old myth that like having muscle will make you slow.
It's simply not true. And if anything, my jujitsu has gotten a lot better and a lot more difficult to get through because I have the muscle to back up what I'm trying to do. And I'm a lightweight person in my gym. I think I'm probably the lightest weight person in my gym. And so there have been times where I have been able to get myself out of a submission or something, not just by pure muscle, but by having a strong enough joint or a strong enough like muscular and skeletal structure to withstand the pressure that's being put down and withstand the attack until either they give up or they slip and I'm able to like make my exit. So, you could say that I should there's people that would argue I should be doing more functional training.
Yeah, whatever we have been doing for you must have been very, very functional for your specific sport, that being jiu-jitsu grappling, when you were just able to just sometimes just manhandle some people who maybe even had higher body weight, but not as much muscle.
I can
not been doing the functional type of training that I would have functionally implement for them to do if I was their coach.
By doing single leg hip thrusts to balance out a glute imbalance on my right side and doing them as heavy as I can now glute bridge a 220-pound man off of me in jiu-jitsu. I never intended to train that skill, and now I have it because I built enough muscle and a massively fat ass to be able to push the weight that I need to push. So as
nowadays, it's obviously all that counts anyway.
Yeah, and it's like
you can see by the name of this podcast.
But imagine if I had not trained that and I was like, I'm only going to do what's functional for jiu-jitsu and just like spent hours and hours doing funny little like 2-pound shoulder extension, hypertension.
We're just pretending to eloquently rant off on all these types of side tangents. We're just all about the ass over here.
I was like, listen, it's all that really matters. Ass is king, and I will take having a fat ass over being skinny any day.
Yep. I mean,
just so happens that when you build it with muscle, you kind of end up being a little skinny regardless.
Amen and praise the Lord.
Yeah. The moment, and you know what else though? The moment I stopped worrying about how much I weighed, that was when I really got the ass gains going on.
Yeah, this should be something that any female listening should write down and take notes.
Yeah. I weigh the same now as I was at my heaviest in high school. And in high school, which is like over 10 years ago now, I was like chunky and flabby and like out of shape and unathletic. And I mean, I wasn't gross looking, but I weigh the same amount now and I look significantly lighter. I'm significantly more muscular. I'm significantly more athletic. I feel better.
Next episode will be body dysmorphia. So
yeah. Because we fight it out here. That's one of the demons I fight in the gym on a regular basis. Yeah. But it's just, it took time. I think that to bring it back, it took time. It didn't take me 12 weeks. It's taken me, God, how many? It's been over a year. It's been over 52. It's been almost 100 and it's almost been 100 something weeks now that we've been building at this. And it's not been it wasn't an Instagram program. It's not one of those fun workouts. It doesn't look good while I'm doing it. I heard somebody in the gym comment the other day, she does the same workout like all the time, but she's still getting stronger. Like I overheard that between music sets and I like laughed to myself because I was like, yeah, that is boring. You have to grind through it. You have to if you want to get good at something, you have to do it over and over and over again.
Also, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Exactly. And you know what? Every single week I go in there and I add 5-10 pounds to a lift. Every single week, one of my lifts goes up. Sometimes 2 of my lifts go up. Sometimes I PR. Sometimes I get disconnected and totally mess up. But it's every
so maybe harking back on that earlier subject. That's also like a nice way when you're just getting stuck on not making progress in your main lift. Maybe just focus on some accessories, right? Like I can't even remember when I hit a real actual like substantial lifetime barbell PR, but I hit like a nice juicy split squat, dumbbell split squat PR. Felt good about myself, flexing my quads in the mirror after being done in the bedroom with the missus. So there you go. I mean, find ways to enjoy life where you can.
But you can't expect it to be instant or quick. You can't do a crash diet and get there. It's just it's a grind, but it's one that you can enjoy, and it's one you can, like, find ways to keep interesting even when you're just doing the same stuff over and over. In the same way that, like, all the best relationships in your life are relationships that have been formed over long periods of time, and you just getting used to that person and understanding, the nuances of who they are and what's going on. It's like you're not going to achieve any of your goals by, jumping on quick little fixes. There's no such thing as a quick fix. You can band-aid a mindset for a minute, you can band-aid anything, but it's not.
This is going back a little bit to what I was trying to refer to with like swipe culture, having even people, partners, relationships appear replaceable and like looking for the next best thing, like only surround yourself with like-minded individuals. Like, how realistic is that for anyone at all times? Like, if some people are truly exceptional, what about the other 95% of people? Where does it leave them? Is everyone always at all times going to look for like, and like I genuinely legitimately avoided contact with a lot of my very close friends for long periods at a time, and self-isolating a bit to make progress in one or the other regard, or just like not clutter my headspace with stuff.
Yeah.
So like there is a lot of things to be said to, surround yourself with like-minded individual, or at least have no one be in the way, right? If maybe that's not immediately possible. But again, maybe like an insidious side effect of the culture that we just talked about, like everything is replaceable, everything is disposable. And this is something with relationships that you just sort of mentioned on side note, where I've seen, like, when I've talked to like friends who have trouble with their girlfriends and like maybe trying to get some insight. And something that I recently time and time came up time and time again is that, like, maybe it's also a little bit of a delusion to think that it's always going to be all that much better with the next person. Like, my next relationship will be this and that. Well, everyone being a human being, everyone being a person at the end of the day that has his own individual flaws, most likely the next person, after you get to know him for another 2 or 3 years, where in the beginning it seemed like, oh, now this time all this other bullshit from my last relationship's not going to happen, and now I found someone who's truly great with me.
Exes are crazy.
Yeah, and then maybe you find out, or you end up finding out, okay, this person has a few other flaws, a few other, construction sites with their personality, that things that need to be addressed, or things that need to be adjusted for, things that you will still need to find ways to deal with, to be with the person, to be mature about. And everyone being a person, everyone will have flaws. The next relationship is just going to have just as many flaws as the last one, just going to be different flaws if you're lucky.
Yeah, it's just like, we do live in a very much an instant gratification world where, like, you can log on to any dating app and just try to swipe for the next best thing. You go on a great date with somebody, have a great time, you get home and you're swiping away again, which is one of the reasons why I got rid of them all, because I think people kind of like forget that all this stuff is connected. And just like if you want to build a strong, healthy body, you have to invest time and effort over a long period of time. It's the same with, if you want a strong, healthy relationship, you have to invest your time and your energy over a long period of time. And it's not to say
most importantly, keep doing that. Like, there's never ever any point in time where, like, not 3 years in, not 4 years in, not 5 years in, not 10 years in,
there's no
always have to keep at it, else it's going to decay, just like not going to the gym.
Yeah, like you have to go into you have to start treating people like investments in your life. And yeah, you don't keep everybody in your life, because there are people who have different value sets that are incompatible with yours, or different mindsets. You know, there's tons of people I've met that I've liked immensely, and just found out that we live very different lifestyles that were not compatible, or that I thought were good people, but their mindset was so different from mine that it was hard for me to be around them, and I wasn't enjoying my time with them. But then I have very close relationships that I have invested years and years into, but it's constant improvement too. It's identifying where I'm failing, identifying where they're failing, communicating that, going through periods of being extremely uncomfortable and not enjoying their company and not wanting to be around them. And then coming back around to, okay, yes, this is still like a good friend who stuck with me through thick and thin. And I think that a lot of this, the older people get, I think the more it clicks in. And for me, a lot of this came to very clear focus while I was going through my cancer diagnosis and my chemo treatment and everything, because you don't want somebody at that point that is like, you don't need somebody that's flashy, that looks good on paper, that, you know, is doing all these like super fun all the way out there things. Like, you don't want that flashy, showy Instagram boyfriend in those moments. You want that friend or that person that has been constantly committed to not only you and your relationship, but to who they are and improving themselves. And you're not going to get that on a first date off a dating app. You're going to get that through context of knowing them and through spending time and investing, and not just like romantically, but in terms of like platonic friendship as well. It all works the same. You have to invest the time. You have to struggle through some of the areas that are uncomfortable and work at it. And the way that we live right now, just being able to like open your phone and compare your life to everybody else and what they're doing well, because they're only posting the good stuff.
I don't need friends. I can just pay mentors.
Yeah. Right. So like, but it's like, it's so easy to get in the headspace where you're just comparing and you're like, well, I am so great on my own. I have all this stuff going for me. Here's my resume. Here's my accomplishments. Look at the awards on my wall. Like, anybody would be lucky to have me. And this person isn't living up to my expectation of them. Let me just swipe them away.
Yeah.
When the reality is, if you take a little self-awareness, you can be like, yeah, I'm a deeply accomplished person. I have all this good stuff going for me. I am absolutely a great person to be around, but am I the best partner to this person that I can be? And it takes like a lot of self-awareness, and you have to be very comfortable with yourself to ask that question and really hear the truth of the answer, because it's easy to get caught up in all of the accomplishments in your personal wins. And it's very difficult to sit back and say, yeah, I've kind of fucked up my friendships because I isolated myself and I spent the past few months, working on myself, which is fine, but I also missed some really important events. Or my friend doesn't need me to be the accomplished military officer, blah, blah, blah. My friend needs me to be somebody that can listen to their problems and kind of hold their hand and be forgiving of them, because they can't forgive themselves right now for their own weaknesses. And like, that's not something that you're going to get on Instagram. It's not something you're going to get with a 12-week program. It's not going to happen on an app, on the second, third date. It's not even going to happen in the second or third month of knowing somebody. Like, that stuff takes years to build. And I think it's difficult for a lot of people, especially my age, to really wrap their head around that. And I think that's why so many of them are like unhappy and miserable, and unable to get into meaningful, fulfilling relationships.
Yeah, and just also with times being a little bit more tumultuous the past few years, been a true test of character for many friendships. And you can see that across the board. I feel like even almost a little bit cross cultures. It seems that as times are tough, people at some point will have to reveal their real character. What you're dealing with. I mean, in grown-up life, where some people will end up having kids, having families, and maybe not be all that deep into building, maintaining, and then working on friendships at most times, but still no
You
one can do
still-
everything alone at all times. Definitely.
you
Very,
can
very
still
hard.
establish those friendships with your spouse. Like I think we're seeing now a lot of what they're calling COVID death in relationships, where people have spent an intense amount of time with their partner over the past 2 years, like
No.
almost too much time, and it's been like for many reasons very difficult, and we're seeing a lot of marriages and relationships kind of fracture.
Opposite could also be a tough
Yeah.
strain, also caused by COVID potentially, right?
Yeah, there's also people that have been thrown together and have found new ways to express themselves and new connections. Like actually, I think a good example of that is my parents, because my dad used to go to the office 5 days a week. So he'd be gone from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And with working from home, he was obviously home on the farm with my mom all day long and able to walk away from the computer, able to interact. And now they have, whereas before they've always had a strong relationship. They've been married like 40 something odd years now. But before, my mom would be a little frustrated that my dad wasn't around as much, and like she didn't get to have the conversation she wanted to have with him. Now they have these cute little rituals through the day where, they'll have lunch together. They'll go take a walk and fix something on the farm, or they're like much more in tune with each other's needs because they were more present. And I think that's a very positive example of, the two people that have invested time over distance in their relationship and just like really gotten to know each other and become better friends through the years.
I feel like this will be a very awesome end note for this episode of the podcast. Just like a nice, traditional, old-fashioned picture of counterculture against swipe culture. So
it still exists. There's hope.
They shut it down right here for so like for the free people that are still listening, like what the fuck are you doing with your time? And get out of here.
Maybe they're at the gym.